Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works, proudly supported by Valvoline and Sparesbox. Don't forget Benny5 on checkout. This week, we're talking tools. We're gonna do 10 tools to make your toolbox better once you've started playing with cars to pigeonhole you into the automotive space forever. So it's no secret that I am a mechanic. I have been in the trade for more than half of my life at this point. So I've definitely refined my tool setup year on year. There's a lot of things I've added and taken out of my toolbox over the time, things I've worked out that I do and don't need. So today we're going to be talking about things to sort of streamline your process and potentially make what you're doing either safer, better, or when I say better, neater presented or a better finished job or quicker. So we're going to start with Aend Tools. So anyone who's started delving into Aend lines knows that they can be fiddly. And the thing that you really need to keep in mind is you do need specific equipment. So a good set of vice jaws is really handy. These particular ones are plastic, but they do also do aluminium ones. This is an olive inserting tool for Teflon style hose. And the good thing is this actually has all the sizes. Swap that over for the smaller and larger olives.
Tasty.
These also come in really handy, especially if you're building hose on site or at the track. I've got one of these in my drag challenge toolkit, as well as all of these spanners as well. So a full set of Aend spanners. I haven't grabbed all of them out of the toolbox, but it gives you an idea what they go all the way from -3 to -20. So they're super handy. And then an Aend shifter. Now this is probably the king of Aend tools because unfortunately -12 isn't always -12 and -8 isn't always -8. A lot of them have what they call an A and a B nut. So this will fit the fitting end. So when you're putting it on and off a water pump, a turbo, anything like that, that will fit the hose to fit and remove the hose, but it won't necessarily fit the hose when you're assembling it. So things like this Aend shifter combined with some of these vice jaws can make assembling hose a total breeze. The next tool we're going to talk about is Allen key or hex bits. These things are so handy because you can put them on ratchets and get into super tight areas compared to your standard Allen key. These coupled with a really fine tooth ratchet can be gold. Like I've been under dashboards before and in engine bays. A lot of European cars used hex heads a while ago. Now they've gone to Torx. You can also get these in Torx as well if you're doing a lot of European stuff, so it's definitely worth looking at that as well. But yeah, these are sometimes just gold, like getting you out of trouble. Even today, we were using them on the Cresta earlier, so yeah, these are probably one of my favorite tools as well. These particular ones aren't actually very expensive. These are Craftsman's ones. So yeah, you can have these for not a lot of money. There's also other like entry-level brands out there that are supplying them as well, so you don't always need to go to the top of the tree. A lot of the products we'll show you guys today are probably going to be more premium brands, but it's not always the case in that you need to buy something premium. Some of the stuff is more accurate. Hand tools like spanners and ratchet spanners and that sort of stuff, you do definitely get what you pay for, but you don't always need to go to the top of the tree, especially for something like this that you may only use once a month. The next tool are these German bendy things. Now, I don't know what their technical name is, but they're flexible drivers. So they've got inbuilt sockets on the end of these particular ones, and they're available from, I think, 7mm all the way to 13. These ones are made by Worth, but there's definitely other manufacturers out there. I have also seen a version of this which has a 1/4" hex on it, so you can put any socket you like on it. And I've also seen another version of this flexible shaft that goes on a 1/4" ratchet. So these are super handy for things like hose clamps, putting in dash screws. Some head units have 10mm screws, so it's really good to be able to get down the side of the head unit and just twist it in like a normal screwdriver. They're also not very expensive. Like I think this whole set's about $120 Australian. So yeah, well worth adding to your toolbox if you are playing around, especially with metric stuff. I don't think these are available in Imperial. So sorry, North America. But yeah, there's maybe another manufacturer out there, but I haven't seen the Imperial versions of these and I don't really think I would have a need for them. Actually, that's something else worth talking about, even though it's not directly related to what we're talking about. Building your toolkit to suit the vehicles you're working on. I don't have a lot of Imperial tools anyway, and I feel like buying a lot of the pre-packaged bundle tools, like sometimes they're called like apprentice kits or starter kits, and sometimes they'll come in a roll cab like this. You can find that you're actually going to buy a ton of tools that you're very rarely going to use. So in my opinion, it's worth putting a basic toolkit together yourself, like basic spanner set, socket set, screwdrivers, hammer, pliers, all that sort of deal. But that's maybe another thing we can talk about in another episode. The next tool I want to talk about is specialty ratchets. Now, when you buy a socket set, typically you're only going to get a pretty basic ratchet with it, but I feel like it's sometimes not enough. I've got a lot of specialty ratchets. This is only kind of a quick grab of what I pulled out of the toolbox, but I've got a long handle flex ratchet. These are really handy for just getting into stuff. I actually find this is pretty good for most crank balancer bolts, so just getting in there, and if you've got a radiator support kind of in the way here, you can still get a nice drive on it. This particular 1/4 inch ratchet is a speed ratchet, so good for pulling stuff like small engines and timing covers and that sort of stuff, pulling them apart and putting them back together. This is my go-to for any spark plugs, because you've got a nice, same thing, nice range of movement. You can still kind of almost use it like a speed ratchet, and it's quite a fine ratchet. Fine ratchets are really good for restricted movement as well, so you don't need a lot of input from the ratchet handle to actually spin the socket. And yeah, I find that's really good. Having a really small stubby 1/4 ratchet is a godsend. Same thing when you're under dash. I've said under dash a lot of times. It's probably because of all my traumatic experiences under dashes as an apprentice. For some reason, I got a lot of dash jobs doing heater cores and blend door motors. I did a dash in a BA Falcon wagon. I think I didn't diagnose it, and someone else had done the diagnosis work anyway. I had that dash out like 5 times, and these sort of tools were just super handy. A long handle 1/2 inch ratchet as well, that's quite fine. Same thing, it can get you out of a lot of binds where you don't quite need a breaker bar, or you want to have a specific position of that square head, because the biggest downfall of a normal breaker bar is you can't position that square drive, so you're pretty limited to where you're starting. You've basically got 4 points there combined with 6 points of the socket, so sometimes the indexing is not quite right, whereas a fine tooth long handle 1/2 inch ratchet can get you out of a lot of trouble. Admittedly, all the ratchets I'm showing you today are snap-on, but you can get equivalent products from all sorts of different manufacturers. Harbor Freight actually do some pretty good budget level stuff if you are in the US, like the Icon series stuff's not bad. By no means is this an ad for any of these products actually today, but yeah, definitely worth keeping in mind. We are not showcasing the brand so much today, but the tool and what it does, because yeah, I bought most of this stuff anyway, so yeah, let's keep on going, because I could talk about tools all day.
That's probably obvious to some, but the kink in the speed ratchet, is that why it's a speed ratchet? Because of...
Yeah, so you can go...
Yeah, I see. Yeah, cool.
I mean, you can still use the other one normally like a speed ratchet as well, but having that offset definitely helps a bit.
Here we go. Show us why it's called a speed ratchet. Amazing.
That's really good as well for like fiddly, like dashboard jobs and engine bay stuff where you can only get a really limited range of movement.
Even like the wheel arch stuff, right? With the wheel on.
Yeah, anyway, like, doing a front
even
bar
for me,
up.
that's even useful for me.
Doing a front bar up without having to pull the wheel off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's literally half the length of a standard 1/4 inch ratchet, and it's got super fine gearing too, so it doesn't need a lot of angle to actually move the socket. Now this next item is pretty boring, but I think it's one that's definitely worth mentioning. This is a gas strut clamp. Anyone who's worked on a Toyota in the last 30 years will probably own one of these, because the gas struts on the bonnets do fail. You may be surprised to notice that the Cresta has a functioning gas strut. Well, I replaced those because of this exact reason, but there's a few different sizes available also. This particular one is one of the cheaper ones, and it doesn't suit the large shafts in some of these ones, but you can also get dearer ones. This is literally a 1/4 of the price of this one. Pretty handy little tool that can stop you getting bashed in the back of the head with a bonnet catch, because I've done that and it's not fun and I don't recommend it. Another tool that's really handy if you are working in tight or confined spaces, especially around engine bays with turbos and whatnot, are crow's foot spanners or crow's foot sockets. Now these are, as the name implies, they are a spanner combined with a socket, so it allows good purchase for offset to get around things. These are also available in brake flare nut style fittings for hydraulic and air conditioning applications, but I don't have those because I've actually got brake flare nut spanners, and for me they work fine. But yeah, same thing, these are pretty cost effective. These are Craftsman ones, so I think back in the day I bought these from Sears in the US. I think they were like 20 bucks. Like, they were so cheap. So it was the sort of thing, same thing. It's the sort of thing you don't use a lot, but when you start to do intricate fiddly under engine based stuff or inlet manifold stuff, sometimes it's the case of you've forgotten to tighten something up, like an oil line on a Subaru. This may be the difference between pulling an inlet manifold back off if you've got a restriction like that where you can't get a socket directly down onto something. You've got a nice bit of purchase, you can come around and nip it up that way. Probably not the greatest for doing assembly as far as tightening it the whole way. These are really good for either tightening or loosening something off. Like I said, if there's an oil line or a brake line or something like that that may have been left loose, these are really good for saving the day and stopping you pulling assemblies back apart. Anyone who's watched the channel for more than about 5 minutes knows I do love a good ratchet spanner, and these are part of my specialty spanner collection. These are pretty narrow head ratchet spanners, so they're really good for tight confined spaces. Also got some stubby spanners and some long spanners here, and as well as a flare nut spanner, which we already talked about. All of these spanners can be had individually from different suppliers. So sometimes it's worth buying these ones. 10, 12, 14 is pretty common for flare nuts and that sort of deal in metric, and 3/8, 7/16 and half if you are using imperial stuff, like old tractors or whatever. So yeah, these are super handy for, same thing, getting you out of trouble and stopping issues like rounding brake flare nuts, because once you round them, you really don't have a lot of option other than removing the brake line, cutting the flare off, putting a new nut on and then flaring it. And invariably you'll flare it without putting the nut on, so you'll be there 2 or 3 times yelling at it and no one's winning at that point. But yeah, it's worth building your spanner set because there's no amount of combination that you can have that won't help you out in the field. But in saying that, you could end up with 200 or 300 spanners depending on what you end up with, because we've got all sorts of different stuff at different offsets. Like this one actually is a good example. This is a long spanner for brake bleeding, or I use it for brake bleeding. So if you look at it, both of the heads are offset, so you've got good clearance on the caliper. This is a 810, so most Subarus are 8 or 10 mil brake fluid bleed nipples on the calipers, and yeah, this one is really handy for that sort of job. So on the same vein that I've already talked about, starting to pick tools, specialty tools to suit the cars you're working on can definitely get you out of trouble or save you time. It's not worth probably buying every single one of these. Like this goes from 6 mil all the way up to about 30 in a double-ended combination. So yeah, you could spend like that set, if you were to buy every one of them, is probably $1,000 from Snap-on. But in saying that, there's most likely a entry-level tool company that also supplies similar tool, which 9 times out of 10 will get you out of trouble.
I did have a question.
Yes, what is your question?
Regarding these ones first. How do you do the cool flippy thing?
Hey?
What's the technique on that cool flippy thing you're doing?
I don't know, just holding spanners for
Holding
ever.
spanners and flipping them.
It's just habit. I just keep my hands busy.
I'm gonna have to change this to slow-mo and really just slow that down. All right, this is slow-mo for the players at home.
It's probably not actually that exciting. These particular drill bits, these can cut bits, got me out of trouble, well, Benny technically, at Bradenton Motorsports Park when we did Sick Week in 2023, when the Mustang flex plate came loose and we had to re-drill a new flex plate. And anyway, there's a whole lot of story, but a good drill bit set will save you hours and hours of drama. And this bit set, in my opinion, is the best set we've ever used. Dad, to his credit, absolutely nailed the hole in exactly the right spot. And because of the accuracy of these bits, we were able to put the flex plate on, and we still haven't actually pulled that out since. Hopefully the Mustang will be back soon, but that's another story. But yeah, I highly recommend adding to your toolkit a really good quality drill bit set. An assortment like this is really good because it's a mechanics bit set. My one gripe is that it's Imperial. Hopefully one day Can Cut do metric as well in a grab kit. They do offer some metric bits, but they are typically loose. But yeah, having them all together is mad. And the other thing I do like about these is they will sell you bits separately. You don't have to buy another kit. So if you have a bit that you use a lot and you do wear it out, you can replace it. The other thing that's worth mentioning with these particular step style tips is you can't sharpen them. So there is one downfall to them, but in my opinion, it's a good trade-off for a good bit. And these things work fantastically in sheet metal, hard, thick steel, plastic, wood, whatever you can throw at it, this thing will cut it. So get about it. Actually, shout out to Jacob for lending us the original bits, because at the time I hadn't heard of Can Cut and I hadn't seen their tools, and Jacob actually lent us his first set, and since then I fell in love. And fortunately these guys are awesome enough to actually help us out when we did, I think it was Rocky Mountain Race Week last year. They sent us some tooling and they also chucked in some money. So yeah, massive shout out to Can Cut Drill Bits, and thanks for their support. Now this is probably one of the most heavily featured tools on our channel. This is a funnel bucket. That's not the real name, but that's what we call it. So it's basically a coolant bleeding funnel that comes with all sorts of adapters and fittings to fit a ton of vehicles. I won't say every vehicle, because no doubt there'll be some Eastern European radiator cap that is not fitted here. But this thing is fantastic for bleeding cooling systems. Any cooling system it works with, in my opinion. Subarus particularly, it's really handy when on turbo cars you do get all sorts of funky airlocks, but I've never had a Subaru I couldn't bleed with this that had a functioning head gasket. Every now and then you get a curveball with something that's got a blown head gasket, which there's no way you're ever going to bleed it up properly. It's also worth mentioning it has this really handy stopper. So once this is full, you can still remove it without spilling coolant everywhere, because once you take the fitting off, it's just like a normal radiator cap. They clip on, and without the stopper, it's just going to spew whatever's in this funnel all through your engine bay. But yeah, really handy part. And same thing, not expensive. These, they're pretty readily available online. Some tool trucks have them. You can buy them at some parts stores as well. So yeah, there's tons of options to pick one of these up. But yeah, in my opinion, really good tool, especially if you're going to be doing cooling system work at home.
Yeah, you do use that one extremely often.
Yeah, it gets a lot of work. Didn't I give you one of my ones?
Yes, I have one of your older ones. I don't. Is that a give or a long-term?
No, that's yours. That's yours now.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I replace it about once a year because when I use it so heavily, this tip does wear, and sometimes you get lazy and jam that tip directly in the radiator. And the problem is it heats the plastic up, and it actually makes this tip smaller, and it doesn't fit the fittings. So yeah, once a year, give or take, I'll probably put this one into the secondary or spares shelf, or I'll give it to someone else. But yeah, for under $100, probably one of the best bang for buck tools you can get to save you time and make stuff work better for you.
Oh, the magic sockets. This has got to be one of your most asked questions.
This is literally the most
where do you get these
common
from?
comment on any video is, where do you get these sockets? Well, the short answer is Japan, because I have not been able to find any tool shop in Australia that sells these. These are Tajima branded, Tajima, if you want to Google it. I have found them online for sale. Someone actually sent me some at one point, so I can't remember who it was, but thank you to whoever sent them to me. The thing I will mention with these though is that I think the Japanese 1/4" hex is a different standard to the Australian one, and you actually need to cut about, ironically, about 1/4 inch or 6.3 millimeters off the tip to make them lock into local 1/4" tooling. So that one is not cut and it will pull out. But this particular one we've cut down. So that one's cut down and that one locks in the tool. But nevertheless, these are, like I said, the most asked about tool and probably one of our most used tools. It is also worth mentioning you can get different variations of this. Like this particular tool, it adapts 1/4" sockets directly to one of these impact guns.
Can you get shorter ones?
Yes, I have them here. It may be worth just buying one of these as opposed to buying these, because if you've already got a 1/4" socket set, or especially if you've got a deep 1/4" socket set, that's going to save you a lot more money. Like that tool is probably about $40 and these are about $20 each. So if you want to get different sizing, like I've got from, I think 7 millimeters all the way up to 19. But in saying that, I don't think I've ever used the larger ones. It was more like I was buying them, so I was going to buy all of them. But yeah, these are probably, like I said, the most used and most asked about tool on the channel. Obviously, you need to pair it with a 1/4" impact gun. This is our Ryobi one. We're not sponsored by Ryobi, but in my opinion, they're the best bang for buck power tools you can get. You can buy them pretty much anywhere in Australia. The hardware shop that distributes these is pretty much in every other town and city. So yeah, they're pretty well made for what they are. The warranty is pretty good as long as you're not using them for trade use. I would argue I'm not using them for trade use, but whatever. Yeah, good product and something that I enjoy using because of the flexibility with these sort of things. You can bang in all your sockets and off you go.
That's actually a handy way of storing those.
That's another rando snap-on thing. I think it's originally supposed to be for normal sockets, but actually I had it in my 1/4" socket, no, 3/8 socket drawer, but it was already in a drawer just sitting there, so it didn't make much sense to store stuff on a magnetic mat horizontally. So I was like, oh, I'll put it on the wall, and then it's bought me more space in my 3/8 drawer as well.
Uh-oh.
Well, that pretty much wraps us up for our 10 tool pick. If there's another tool that you've seen us use on the channel, or if there's something you want us to cover, by all means, let us know in the comments. Let me know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Legitimately, let us know in the comments. It's not a piss take this time. And we'll try and cover it for you. We may do another one of these episodes because even my own realization of some of the tools that I've got there probably aren't on people's radars. So there may be a second series or a second part to the series, or we may do just a full-on toolbox breakdown. But I don't think we've got enough time I don't think the internet has enough space for me to talk about everything that's in that toolbox. But yeah, like I said, if there's something you want us to cover, by all means, let us know. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.
ASMR.
Getting weirdo sounds.
That'd probably help someone sleep. We'll do a 10-hour loop for you.
Skrillex.